Super Wild Card Weekend is here. The Houston Texans, the Cleveland Browns, NRG Stadium, just hours away. And what better way to get you set for this matchup than a preview, the final little bit of preview here on YouTube. If you don't know who I am, I'm Cody Stoots. And if you don't know who this is, you better learn it. Landry Locker here with you. We are going to get you set here for the Texans and the Browns. Landry, we've been waiting for this all week since last week finished, since a week ago we were getting ready for Colts Texans. Since last week, we were waiting all week for this. The energy in this city, the excitement in this city is at a near all-time high for this Texans team.
Yeah, it should be, because it seems like the start of something. It doesn't feel like the Giants last year with Brian Dable in year one. You get in the playoffs, you maximize what you can do with Daniel Jones, and then you kind of know, like, if you're not wearing, Giants gear, that the best is not yet to come in that situation. You've kind of maxed out. I think this team has perhaps maxed out what they can do, or will max out what they can do, but it seems like the start of something. So that's the exciting part. This isn't, getting in with Brian Hoyer or getting in with Brock Osweiler. You feel like you got a really good quarterback. There seems to be excitement. There seems to be stability in the organization. There seems to be a really good chance you can win this game. I also think there's going to be a really good chance there's a lot of Browns fans at the stadium today, which will be exciting too. That'll add a whole nother element to it. But the excitement's there, and the excitement is there because people know, or people are starting to come around, that this is a real thing, and this is something being built, not just one of those annual fluke runs to the playoffs that we see in the NFL.
The biggest question for this season was what foundational pieces are here, in addition to, do you have the right head coach and do you have the right quarterback? And it felt very apparent very early on in this season, you got the right quarterback. And as the season's gone on and some of the adjustments and coaching and improvement some of these players have made under D'Amico Ryans, it feels very much like you have the right head coach. So you got the foundation built, and then the rest of the season's about, okay, let's see how far along on everything else this organization, this team is. And it feels like, again, I think I've said this before on the channel, this is a game I expected them to be playing in 2026. And here we are in 2024. And the Texans are already here, in large part because they figured out the head coach, they figured out the quarterback, and then all the other things. Like, they've had so many things break their way, go the right way for them in this matchup. I mean, shoot, if they don't take care of, if Jaguars don't fall apart, this team's playing a game on Monday because the weather moved the Buffalo game. Like, there's so many different things that have worked out for this team. And some of it is luck they've made. Some of it that they got a little lucky. But, man, I'm pumped about this matchup. I know you did the numbers video last night, the numbers that matter to this matchup. I've got that video pinned at the top of the chat. Check that out when we're done here on the live if you haven't watched Landry's video on the numbers that matter for this matchup. I talked a lot this week about the Texans versus big-time defenses, Landry. Am I overrating their performances against some of these top defenses, the struggles that they had against the Falcons, the Saints, the Panthers, the Ravens, the Jets? Am I overrating some of those?
Well, in the Falcons game, I think that the offense, they came through when they needed to. Sometimes you're going to have to do that. CJ's a touchdown pass to Dalton Schultz, in which he basically drew it up, and him and Bobby talked about it. They should have overcome that. They were depleted in the secondary, so they obviously, Atlanta drove easy and kicked the field goal. The Saints, I thought they were fine. I thought the Saints, they handled that. I'm not as concerned about that because I think primetime CJ is a thing. And I also think that when it comes to the receivers actually being, available to CJ Stroud, minus Tank Dell, I think they're going to be fine. So the overstate, don't know. I mean, I think you dove into it. Now, if you would have said the Jets, I would have said that's weird. Not necessarily the Jets. The Jets game, I get. The Jets game, I would have got. But if you would have said the Browns last time around, I throw that out.
CJ didn't play.
Yeah, with Case Keenum playing, like the Browns last time around, like from a Texans offense versus Browns defensive point of view, I put no stock in that. Now, from a Browns offense versus Texans defense, that was basically a visual of what a beatdown looks like.
You mentioned it. The Texans going to get back Robert Woods, Noah Brown. Those guys have been missing in action for a couple of weeks. And then Jonathan Grenard set the play. Will Anderson will be on, it seems like, his typical snap count. The D-line's going to be ready to go with those defensive tackles. It feels like the only guy that's not available here is Jerry Hughes. So all hands on deck for this one. Who's the guy beyond Nico and Dalton Schultz that you believe is going to show up in this matchup? Who's that third pass catcher that's going to take care of their business in this game, in this matchup? Because, look, if the defense plays well enough, maybe Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz are enough. But who's that third guy if you do have to score a little bit more than you anticipated because the defense is allowing Flacco to do some of the playoff Flacco things that he's done in the past? Who's that third guy that you believe in?
I think it needs to be Robert Woods, intermediate, just being available, moving the chains every once in a while. I think it's got to be Robert Woods. I would say Noah Brown. That's very boomer busty. Like damn near 80% or more of his productions come in 3 games, 3 big games though. But I would say Woods has to be the guy. Look, they're not going to set the world on fire at wide receiver. It just has to be occasional chain moving and all that. So I would like to think it would be Robert Woods. He's been there. He's battle tested. That would have to be it. Now, I don't know that they need a ton behind Nico. They need more than they got. You can't have 2 catches for a combined 11 yards like you did last time. But if you ask me, I would say Woods.
Man, I've just been waiting for Robert Woods to sort of recapture some of those first 5 weeks or so that he put together. He had over half of his targets in those first 5 weeks. I mean, Baltimore, it made sense because, Nico's still trying to get used to everything. Tank Dell's a rookie. We got 10 targets, 6 catches out of Robert Woods, but they went to him a whole lot early on in the season, in part because he was getting open, and that was just, hey, take what was there, take the profit, keep moving. I've been waiting for that Robert Woods sort of reemergence, and it doesn't have to be an incredible game. Just when it's 3rd and 3, run 4 yards, turn around, catch the football, move the chains. Like, it doesn't have to be like he didn't have to throw it back to vintage Rams Robert Woods for him to have a big impact for this team.
Yeah, that's what he's got to do. And I mean, that's going to be the weakness for the Texans on offense is, weaponry, specifically at running back. They're one team in the league that doesn't have multiple guys who can make plays at the running back position. And that to me is the biggest damn shame about this squad is, you're going to see it with Ford and Hunt, and they don't even have Nick Chubb today. Like there's teams around the league, and literally every team in the NFL has multiple running backs that they trust to make plays out of the backfield, whether it's receiving, whether it's running. I mean, we saw Taylor Moss, and then they put the kid in on 4th down. I'm not saying that was the right decision, but they trusted him enough to put him out there on 4th down. The Texans, for a long time, they haven't had that. And it seems like something that would be easy to address, just take the position a little bit serious. But that's the most frustrating thing to me is if you don't have receivers and you don't have, weaponry there, maybe you can find other ways to make it happen. But the Texans, unfortunately, they do not have multiple running backs that can consistently make plays and move the chains like they would like to. That's the problem. That's the problem that they're going to have to address. And I think they will. I think we see that change next year. Nothing you can do about it now. It's just a little bit frustrating.
I am very intrigued to see how much they try to run the football, how successful they are running the football, because that's one way you could sort of slow down that defensive line that the Browns have. And it just makes things so much easier for CJ Stroud and this offense to operate. I mean, they feast on people when they can get into 2nd and short or even 3rd and short. Like the chasm of success is huge between when they run Devin Singletary into, the backside of the offensive line and it's 2nd and 9. All of a sudden it's like I just feel like Bobby works better calling plays there. CJ's playmaking ability is easier to access. He's willing to take a chance a little bit more when he's got, 2nd and short and stuff like that. So if you could just run the ball, I felt like if Singletary has a big day, the Browns don't have a chance. That's why I felt like that all week. I just don't know how likely it is that Singletary has a big day against this Browns defense because defensive line's good. They got the 3-name linebacker that's really good. I'm not even going to try to say his name and, ruin that. But all right, so let's flip it over. Texans on defense, there's not going to be a repeat for Amari Cooper. Like, I mean, he might have a day, but he's not going to just dominate and win this game for the Browns, right? I don't feel
Well,
that
I mean,
way.
it's over under 73 and a half yards, like in Vegas, and it's an even bet. So, I mean, if you think he is, then go with that. I think there's a healthy respect for Amari Cooper and what he does, and I think he's one of the most unappreciated. I think that what the Cowboys got for him, I think it was kind of embarrassing. I think there's been times where they haven't really been able to recover from his absence, but I like 265. It almost feels like Texans fans at this point. Some like you see that, and you're talking about him like he's Jamar Chase or Jefferson or Tyreek Hill. He's not, and there's a reason that his over under is 73.5. So I'm not. He's definitely not going to do that, and I would think that DeMeco Ryans has. I don't know that he deserves too much attention, but they're very much aware of what went wrong last time, and they have a visual of what a flukish game from Amari Cooper looks like.
I'll be really interested to see where they put Amari Cooper, who Cooper feels most comfortable going against. Derek Stingley's coming off AFC Player of the Month. He's been really good down the stretch. He's got former defensive backs on Twitter going to battle for him. If you caught some of the Asante Samuel stuff on Twitter.
Asante was on it yesterday. He was on it this morning, 6:45 a.m.
Man, Asante Samuel, I got to imagine. I mean, that's a name I hadn't heard of in a long time. I mean, I remember when his kid's been making plays in the league for a couple of years now, but man, he was going at it. He was facing the wrath of Jets fans and everything.
Yeah, which is not fun.
No. I'll be interested to see where they put Cooper. I'm worried about Njoku. I'm worried about him having a big day.
Should be.
He could very easily sit there with 80 yards and 2 touchdowns and have totally dominated this thing.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested. I don't believe the Browns are running the football against this team, even with limited snaps for Grenard and Anderson over at the end spot. I still don't believe Ford and Hunt and anybody else is going to get the running game going for the Browns. So I'm worried about Njoku. I'm not super worried about Amari Cooper. And I'm waiting for one of these turnovers. The Browns have an incredible amount of turnovers this year. It's not all Flacco, obviously, because he's only been there for a few weeks, but he's thrown a few. He's fumbled the ball a couple of times. I'm waiting for one of these turnovers to be a game-changing turnover. I'm waiting for Flacco, 2-3 plays after the kickoff to throw one into somebody's arms, and then the Texans got a short field and they can put points on the board a little easier against this defense. Like, I feel like, to me, if you win the turnover battle today, that this game particularly is one of those where you're like, 1 turnover, 2 turnovers, especially at a key spot, if it takes points off the board because it's in the red zone, like that to me may be the difference maker, just because this Browns offense has played pretty well. They can put some points on the board. Texas had trouble stopping, good, solid offenses. And so it's like that one key turnover feels like we may be looking at that in the middle of the game, be like, that's a turning point now. And then when the thing's all said and done, that one key turnover, especially if it gives you a short field, I just feel like that turnover is going to be the difference maker. That 1 or 2 turnovers going to be the difference maker in this one. And the Texans don't turn the ball over very much. Best, or at least turnovers in the league. Best number of turnovers in the league.
Yep, that's usually what the case is in a football game. And Flacco will turn it over. That's for sure. He'll turn it over, and he's got very mediocre tackles blocking for him.
You feeling high scoring, low scoring, kind of middle of the pack here for this
middle of the pack? I think I could see both teams passing 21 points or something like that, getting a little bit of a surprise there. Texans have the kicking advantage. I would say overall they have the special teams advantage, so that's another thing to keep an eye on. But I think both teams over 20. I think both teams are going to be able to move the ball. We'll see. It's going to be interesting to see when, not if, but when Cleveland tries to kind of get Jalen Petrie on an island. I mean, they're very aware of his work last game. They've watched Jalen Petrie play all year. It's a big opportunity for him. One of the more disappointing seasons for a Texans player. And the low point was, I mean, obviously it doesn't get any lower than getting benched in a game. And it's not like you're getting benched for Kyle Hamilton or Ronnie Lott or something like that. Like you get benched for guys off the streets. So this is a big chance for Jalen Petrie. He's not going to be able to hide. So there's going to be times where they're going to figure out where he's at. And Joe Flacco, he likes to throw that deep ball. He's going to challenge him. So I would love to see Jalen Petrie come up big, kind of right the disappointment that it's been this year. And he's damn sure going to have the opportunity to do that. I can promise you that. There's not a lot I can promise about this game. I could see it going either way. I could see the Browns winning. I could see the Texans winning. I could see the Browns winning a close one. I could see the Texans winning a close one. I could see the Texans winning by 2 possessions. I could see the Browns winning by 2 possessions. But I can promise you, the one thing I can promise you is there will be shots at Jalen Petrie from Kevin Stefanski and the Browns offense, and he's going to have the opportunity to right the low point of a disappointing season.
If I was Stefanski, I'd dial up that same exact play for the first play of the game.
Well, they did it, and Nelson was kind of hobbled. That's the other element of this is, God bless him, but Steven Nelson, there's been a lot of times, you've seen it, where he's working his ass off just to get on the field. Like there's times where he's staying late and trying to get out there. I was surprised he even came back in the game against the Browns. And you could tell how hurt he was. I was actually sitting in I had the view from the end zone, but I mean, like even lining up, you could tell. So maybe he's a little bit more healthy. He kind of looked banged up against the Colts too, but that's something. Hopefully Steven Nelson isn't as injured as he was last time around.
I think Petrie's probably the player I worry about the most on the defense.
Has to be.
I don't know. I don't know exactly how they're going to defend Njoku. I don't know if that's a Christian Harris job. I don't know if that's a Blake Cashman job. I mean, if Denzel Perryman ends up in coverage, which it seems teams have been able to find a way to put him in coverage, that's not great. But I am worried about Petrie over there. And then from a offensive standpoint, are we getting George Fant back at right tackle for this game? I feel like that's the move for the Texans. That's what they should do. Charlie Heck put together one of the worst starts to a game that I've seen in a long time. Last week, he got benched for Fant. I don't know that it ever made total sense to have Heck in there instead of Fant. Maybe when Fant was banged up, it made sense, but we're getting George Fant back at right tackle for this game, surely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I was surprised that Charlie Heck was in to begin with. I mean, Charlie Heck there's a lot of broke back to Charlie Heck. They can't quit him. So whether it's having him start randomly against the Chiefs last year, whether it's it looks like he's injured and then all of a sudden he's back. I don't know. They like Charlie Heck a lot, and it's not just one regime. Like it's multiple regimes like Charlie Heck. So I really don't know what they're going to do at right tackle. I just know that Myles Garrett, they don't avoid Laramie Tunsil, but I mean, if you don't have to line him up against Laramie Tunsil, why would you not line him up against that right tackle? So they do that quite often, and that's going to be something to keep an eye on. But I don't know what the hell they're going to do at the right tackle spot. They love Charlie Heck. Everybody does.
It needs to be Fant. He plays better. I trust him more in this moment. And it's going to be a tough assignment because, like you said, Myles Garrett's going to be over there quite a bit. I will be interested to see if there are any, Tunsil, Myles Garrett matchups, because I'm sure Laramie Tunsil's got a chip on his shoulder because he's not an All-Pro. That was something that he's been very vocal and adamant that he wants. He's not going to be an All-Pro this year. So no better time to showcase that you think the voters got it wrong. I don't think they did. But if Laramie Tunsil thinks that, hey, shutting down whoever goes against him and maybe no false starts, that'd go a long way into making people feel like, or at least showcasing what you think is an all-pro level of talent. But it's a good one.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt.
Is there a head coach advantage in this matchup? I feel like they're both pretty evenly matched.
Yeah, Stefanski. I mean, it's Stefanski. Like, let's be serious. Like, okay. D'Amico's done a good job. We don't know what D'Amico looks like in the playoffs. I mean, last time I watched the playoff game, I watched a coach who months earlier went to that same place and went for it on 4th and 2 to ice the game with DeAndre Hopkins. He went for it on 4th down with Carlos Hyde. He beat the Chiefs' ass. And he coached a fearless game. And then when the playoffs came around, he didn't have a play on 4th and 1. He peed his pants. His offense disappeared. The only reason you had the lead in the first place was because Tyreek Hill fumbled and there was a pump block touchdown, and he was scared. And he was so scared that after he didn't have a play, despite having a play months earlier on 4th down, he decided to fake a punt. So I'm not saying D'Amico's as gutless or as pitiful as Bill O'Brien in the big moment, but there's a lot of really good coaches. There's a lot of really good players that they don't perform as well in the playoffs, or even if they end up performing well in the playoffs, there's some growing pains. Kevin Stefanski he's more battle tested. So he's been in these situations. I know D'Amico has the coordinator experience. I think Stefanski actually had to coach from his basement or something the last time the Browns were in a playoff game. I think it was in 2020, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. I think
that's
there was
correct.
But yeah, you got to give the advantage to Stefanski because, it's not like we're just talking about experience. We're talking about a guy who, if you're filling out a coach of the year ballot, I think these are the two guys that you're talking about. And Kevin Stefanski's done a hell of a job. He lost Nick Chubb. He's on his fourth quarterback. They've had to overcome a lot, just like the Texans have. So just right now, it can change. Hell, we could be having this conversation in 6 hours and it changes. But I'm going to give the respect and I'm going to give the nod to Kevin Stefanski and say right now they have the coaching advantage. Although from a perspective of quarterback, I feel safe in saying right now, because CJ has been elite all season long, that the Texans have the quarterback advantage despite Flacco being more battle tested.
I 100% agree with you. He's a much better quarterback than Joe Flacco is, even with Flacco playing well and having all these potential playoff records that he can add to or break or all that kind of stuff.
Plus primetime CJ seems to be a thing. It seems to be a thing.
I was looking at the numbers, 11.5 rushing yards for this one. He went for 20 last week. We talked about the legs last week as a weapon. He made it happen a couple of different times. If he's got to use the legs, he will. And just as far as big games, he's only had, to me, one big game in his NFL career to this point. That's last week. He took care of business, 7 for 7 on that game-winning drive. He's incredible. It's big game number 2 of the NFL career, and we know what he did at big games at Ohio State. And there's something about great players that just, when the moment's there, they show up and they take care of business. And I believe in CJ Stroud from that aspect. I am intrigued to watch the Bobby Slowick, Jim Schwartz matchup, the Texans offensive coordinator, the Browns defensive coordinator. Schwartz has had a lot of success against Shanahan-styled offenses.
Boy, they love him in Cleveland, brother.
I felt like he was, if they'd started pretty poorly this season, I felt like he was there to be the head coach for the Browns. They ultimately held things together through a bunch of issues, and Stefanski sticking around. But Schwartz, 9-1 versus Kyle Shanahan in Shanahan's career, and he's got a bunch of success against the Shanahan disciples on top of that as well. So his style of defense plays well against this style of offense. You know what Kyle Shanahan didn't have in those 10 matchups? He didn't have CJ Stroud. So there's that big X factor, that game changer. If Stroud plays at a big-time level of football, I don't know how the Browns match it. It was pretty easy for the Browns to do what they did last time against Case Keenum, Davis Mills. I just don't believe the Browns can match it when CJ's out there putting pressure on them. It was kind of a pressureless endeavor for their offense last time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Jim Schwartz is, he's getting a lot of love up there in Cleveland. They're talking about maybe he should be considered for head coaching gigs and all that. I don't necessarily buy that, but you're right. And he runs, I think, 39.5% man or something like that. And CJ's 27th this year against man. He's first against zone. So, yeah, the style of defense and all that, it definitely has an impact on not just, the Shanahan disciples. The style of defense has had an impact on CJ this year.
Yeah. It's a tough test. It's a fun opportunity for CJ Stroud to kind of add to what is already one of the most impressive rookie seasons for a quarterback, and going to add to it. Just a quick sidebar. He's the offensive rookie of the year. We're not having any of this Puka Nacua conversation.
I would think so, but it's a talking point. People are on it, but I would think that you would lean quarterback on that. That would be me though.
If you don't follow Landry, you need to follow him on here on YouTube. He does a fantastic job here on YouTube. His most recent video is pinned at the top of the chat, so check that out when we are done here. Of course, catch him on Sports Radio 610 on In the Loop 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. weekdays on Sports Radio 610. All right, let's wrap it up here, Landry. I'm not asking for a score prediction. The folks, if they want my score prediction, they got to go to Houston Football, www.houfootball.com. Links in the description.
Worth the price of admission, by the way.
Yeah, I tell you what, man, we're going to have a lot of fun on Houston Football, and we're going to have even more fun if the Texans are able to pull this one out. All right, final thoughts, however you want to final thought it for this game. Get the folks ready.
Final thought is I think this is going to be an electric atmosphere at NRG. I think it's going to come down to if the Texans can find some sort of way to run the ball. I would say that they got to be able to run the ball close to 100 yards. And it's going to come down to number 5, Jalen Petrie. Jalen Petrie needs to have a big game. He needs to bounce back from the low point of a low season. That's going to be the key. Can the Texans avoid the big play like they did last time? I don't anticipate Amari Cooper getting 265 yards, but they're going to have to avoid allowing the big play to Joe Flacco. And when Joe Flacco throws it to you, you're going to have to take advantage because he's going to throw it to you.
Love it. Love it. I feel the same way. I don't believe Amari Cooper's having a big day. In fact, I feel like he's going to disappoint Cleveland fans. And Njoku's the guy that I'm worried about. Cleveland can't run the football. They'll do enough to move the football, put some points on the board, but I trust C.J. Stroud a whole heck of a lot more than I trust Joe Flacco. And I don't believe for 1 second DeMeco Ryans is getting embarrassed twice in such a short span by this Browns offense and Joe Flacco, who is just, I think, 11 months younger than DeMeco Ryans. So, all right, Landry, tell the folks where they can find you, and we'll wrap this thing up here.
In the Loop, 10 to 2, Sports Radio 610, the Odyssey app right here on YouTube, the show of record. If you missed the exclusive interview with Sheldon Rankins, check that out. That was on Thursday. Also had a conversation with Cal and Hannah McNair in studio and the locker room on YouTube. Post-game show right afterwards. We'll hear from DeMeco. We'll hear from CJ. We'll probably hear from some others, and we will react. We'll either be looking back at the game in the season or we'll be looking ahead to the divisional round. It's fun. And always remember, we're all in this together. Appreciate y'all.
The best coverage of the Texans is right here. You're looking at the two right here, Landry Locker. And, of course, I'm Cody Stoots. Thanks for joining in on the live. Houston Football's got the score prediction for you. Tons of videos here on the YouTube channel. Check out Landry's video, the numbers for this matchup. It's pinned at the top of the chat. And I thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Enjoy the game today. It's going to be a blast. If you're going, cheer loud. If you're watching, cheer louder. Make your neighbors know that you're watching the Texans hopefully take care of business against the Cleveland Browns. Appreciate you. Can't wait till we talk Texans again soon and we finish the lives each and every way, the same way each and every way. Eat good, sleep good, be good. We'll talk Texans again soon.